Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 1904 Club podcast, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. And there's a guy here that I think I recognise, but he's a bit more tan than he was the last time I saw him. Prutts, how are you?
I'm really well. It's nice to be back on here. I know it's been a while. I've been horrendously unavailable and irresponsible, but I'm back. It's great. No, it's good to see you all.
Lovely. And Arindam Rej, you're joining us from just across the room from me. You were at the game on Saturday. Our new Hull KR reporter as well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a regular listener, so it's enjoyable to be contributing to the show today. Thank you, guys.
And somewhere in the Vale of York, we've got Fletch, although it's a bit windy. He's walking to the station. Fletch, are you there? You've appeared. How are you?
Yeah, let's see if you can listen to this wind, shall we? It's not great. There's a storm coming, I think.
Yeah.
Cheers.
And with that, he's gone. So yeah, let's Prutts, talk to me about the weekend, because obviously you had you were covering all 72 clubs across the weekend. It was frantic and what have you. What was that like for you?
It was good. It was nice to be back kind of at it, even though obviously, as we've mentioned on here, been working on bits and bobs over the summer. It's always good to get the season kicked off again. Goal laden as well, as I'm sure you saw. There wasn't many teams that didn't register. So it was just a pleasure keeping abreast. Obviously, the Championship's where we started. That very late equaliser for Hull City. We'll come on to that in due course, I'm sure. But from what I've seen, good debut from Oxford. They look pretty good. Pompey gave Leeds a bit of a fright at Ellen Road. And obviously, yesterday, there was an absolute humbling of Plymouth, wasn't there, by Sheffield Wednesday. And it's rounded off tonight with Luton against Burnley. So, busy weekend. Good to be back at it.
So, yeah, for Hull City, a late show. Nothing happened really for 85 minutes. And then, lo and behold, not Plymouth, that's next weekend. Bristol City scored. And then it needed a late penalty from Oscar Estepina to salvage a point. Arindam, you were at the game just alongside me in the press box. What was your kind of assessment of City under Tim Volter for the first time in competitive action?
Well, I've got to be honest and say it was disappointing from my perspective. It was frustrating. There were positive signs, but I think there were too many mistakes, particularly playing out from the back. And that was something we saw happening last season that got to people. To see it again obviously wasn't the ideal way to start the season. On top of that, we were hoping to see dynamic football, more movement, more attacking. And for me, it was still a bit too slow. So I've got to be honest with you guys and say overall my overriding emotion was disappointment, frustration. And credit to the lads for getting back into the game in the end of the way they did. But I still think it's very much a work in progress, and you can see that on the pitch. It's taken a lot of time for the signings to come in. It feels like it's been thrown together at the last minute before the first game of the season. I thought that was reflecting the performance. So as much as I'd love to get off on a much more positive start to the season, that was my honest verdict on what happened on Saturday.
Prutts, you were obviously following the goals coming in from all over the country. Too late on at the MKM. What's your kind of feeling of Hull City? What's the feeling within kind of your footballer friend circles of City?
I think they're very firmly in that kind of group of teams which all think they've got half a chance of doing something half decent. Of course, we discussed at length about them not making the playoffs and the changes that have been made. It's intriguing to get Arindam's take on it, where that way of playing, which was the overriding suggestion of why the managerial change was made, didn't instantly manifest itself. Yes, obviously, more broadly, it takes a while to get these things completely over and a team functioning as it needs to be. But a decent point against a team that will, again, like Hull City, fancy themselves to be top half, top six, top eight come the end of the season. And if you put it in the context of what we saw at the weekend, with Oxford United playing very, very well against Norwich, and Norwich looking bang average, a team that got to the playoff semi-finals, of course, at the end of the last season and changed managers. There's, I'm not saying anyone's getting carried away on the opening day with a draw at home to Bristol City, but results-wise, it's a point on the board. I think we're all a little bit intrigued. Looking at Tim, I think he's one of 3 new managers to English football in the Championship. So he's been very bullish, hasn't he, with what he said so far? It's just up to the players now to kind of back it up and potentially, as we talked before we started recording, whether there's more additions coming through the door.
They're almost, Prutts, aren't they, one of the great unknowns of the Championship this season? Because, and I said this last week, I think, on the show, that, you know, if Liam was manager, you'd know exactly what to get, what you can get from him, from his team. Recruitment would obviously play into that, but the identity of the team would be predictable. We'd know exactly what we were going to get. Under Tim, we don't know. We know it's going to be, as Henrik said a few weeks ago during the summer, heart attack football was his phrase. And I think that Tim's picked up on that, and he sort of said that in a few media interviews. But we don't know how his style is going to take to Championship football, how other teams are going to react to it, and also what his team is going to look like in, 2 weeks on Thursday by the time the window closes. So they are really unknown. And I think it was really important to not lose that first game. You know, they've not won it, which is a shame and frustrating and all those words, etc. But to get something on the board is important, isn't it?
I'm intrigued, though, because from what Arindam said as well, and it's a very hypothetical question or position to put it all in. But if that was a Liam senior team that played like that and got that result and played in that particular way, would it be, oh God, here we go? You know what I mean? Got another season of this, and it'd be moans and groans. But I'm not saying he would be in any real jeopardy, but it's akin to the news that's breaking with Ryan Lowe moving on from Preston, isn't it? They've seen it for one game, and the reaction from the crowds and the media afterwards, seemingly, whether there's a breakdown in communication between Ryan and Preston itself, but they've gone, right, one game's enough, see you later. So it's always intriguing to hear a fan's reaction looking at a relatively similar team without its best players with different eyes, doesn't it? Because you do kind of, new manager, bit of a novelty, let's see where it goes. If it's like this in a month, I'll be intrigued to know exactly what the noises are like coming out of the MKM.
Fletch, I'm coming to you in just 1 second. That's incredible news, isn't it, that Ryan Lowe's left Preston after one game? Arindam, what's your initial, you've seen a lot of Championship football, what's your initial kind of reaction to Ryan leaving Preston after one game?
Yeah, I'm surprised. And I think that any club that makes a decision at this stage of the season has got to think very carefully about it. To me, it looks like it's premature. I think that there were times when Preston probably frustrated their own fans at times last season, but overall, I thought it was a strong campaign. There were stages where they were very strong indeed. So yeah, I don't think it's the time to make a change. I mean, relating to a City perspective, obviously, there's lots of criticism for the manner in which they dispense with Liam Senior, and I do have some perspective. I do know it's a long-term project now it's involved, so I know it's very early to be judging the team. As you guys have been saying, there's going to be new faces that we're expecting. The team's going to be looking very different in a couple of weeks, let alone a couple of months. So these are very early times to judge, and I think that applies to any club. I mean, it's going to take 5-10 games before you see the way new squads have gelled together, the way the systems are functioning. So I just find it very surprising that he's in that position already. Fletch,
Ryan Lowe gone. I guess that's a remarkable decision so early in the Championship season, isn't it?
It's absolute madness. To go after one game, there must have been friction in the off season because I mean I'm lucky enough to have relatives who are Preston supporters, and they weren't happy with this style of football, and clearly they've had enough already. There's been no tactical change by the sounds of things, and he's gone. But I was seeing online as well about Wayne Rooney, one game, and fans are already turning on him. It's like people will compare him with what he did at Birmingham, but you've got to give him a chance. It's managerial tenures are getting shorter and shorter to the point where it's becoming ridiculous.
Prutts, you know Ryan Lowe well. We spoke about Preston quite a few times on the pod last season for obvious reasons, because they were one of the challengers alongside City for that final, or the final two playoff spots as it was before they fell away. What's your thoughts?
The start of the season that they had last season, where they were top of the league, weren't they, going into that first international break, maybe even the second international break, then sets a bit of a benchmark for how the rest of the season, if you're a Preston North End fan, hopefully materialises. I remember speaking to Peter Ridsdale when I went in to have a chat with Lowy and just watch a bit of training, and he was very mindful of how they're perceived, but what football fans want. They're a very well-run, stable Championship club, which again it sounds a bit like you're damning them with faint praise, doesn't it? Oh, well done for not being, fighting at one end and not kind of putting financial fires out, because the Hemmings family that looks after it, obviously after the father passed on, has a financial structure that has a pot of money that goes into Preston every year, and it's not an insubstantial amount of money, I can tell you that. So there's a lot to like about what they do. I just get the general sense for Preston fans that there is that frustration. They're looking at it going, why can't we be an Ipswich? Obviously, a bit of an outlier. You look at what's happened as they've been in the Championship or bobbed down into League One. You look at City getting into the Premier League. You look at Blackpool getting into the Premier League, Huddersfield Town getting into the Premier League. And this is obviously quite over a broad stretch of time. Mm. And they're probably sat there going, well, why can't we do that? Can we have a bit of that type of stuff? And I do totally get that. That's what a fan gives to.
He's back.
It was a great point I was making. So it's the emotional investment that fans make for their football clubs. And I'm with Arindam. There were, and what Fletch was saying, there were certain murmurings over the course of last season about the way that they were playing football and the results that they were getting, plus the reaction from Friday night. Ryan broadly talking about his team and what they were good at, but a lot of people watching the game going, well, Sheffield United didn't look in any real jeopardy during the course of that game and beat them, not comprehensively, but they were relatively untroubled. So I understand from a PR point of view, a manager's got to absolutely back himself, and Ryan will do that, and he's coached some very good teams, and I've watched his teams play very good football. But yes, one game into the season is curious, but looking at it in a broader context, maybe it was just the fact that it looks odd because it straddles a season into another season in one game. But if you take the work as a whole, and there is a frustration, then whether you're one game into the season, 10 games into the season, or at Christmas, you've still got to make the decision, haven't you?
And Fletch, and Arindam, you can come in on this as well. That was the theory at Hull City with Ajun. He didn't want to be in a situation where 1, 2, 3 games into a season with Liam Rosenior, he felt that the situation was the same. Had that, as you touched on at the start, brilliantly, Prutts, had that have been a Liam Rosenior performance on Saturday, everybody would have been banging on the door going, well, look, nothing's changed. So, and then he's forced to make a change one game into the season, and then that looks ridiculous and everybody hammers him. I think that was the worry that the owner at Hull City had about Liam Rosenior. Fletch, is that a fair? Because everybody will look at this right now and go, that's ridiculous. One game, that's ridiculous. What are you thinking about it?
Yeah, but I don't feel that even though on social media there were some critiquing Liam Rosenior's style of play, I think from Ryan Lowe's point of view, the fans actually wanted him completely out of the job. Yeah. I think it was more that everyone loved Liam, but they didn't like his tactical philosophy, and he wanted people to take the brakes off and actually see them fly forward. Which, and it's going to. These players, we're not robotic, and Prutts, you can cast some light on this. When someone comes in with a completely new tactical philosophy, as much as you've got your natural ability, you've then got that mental understanding, and not everyone's going to be the same. You're going to have people who are very academic and are going to be able to take on things a lot quicker than other players.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Plus, as well, it's that kind of Emperor's New Clothes type thing, isn't it? Because we were saying, well, City have dispensed with a bright young manager in Liam, who a lot of clubs are going, well, we take Liam Rosenior in a heartbeat. Just as when Lowy left Plymouth to come up to Preston, Plymouth are going, oh, I'm gutted that this manager's going, and the way that he set the team up and the way that he plays football. So I'll be intrigued to see where his next port of call will be, because, as I said, there are levels in football, and Championship security and comfort. Again, it's, and I'm not. It does sound like you're damning with faint praise, doesn't it? But that is talk to Birmingham City, talk to Reading. You know what I mean? Give us mid-table in the Championship, just nicely kind of bubbling along. But then there's, when you listen to different podcasts and different opinions on it, Preston is one of those really intriguing ones where you kind of look at it and go, if you are a Preston North End fan, what have they been going into these seasons thinking about? Do they think realistically we should be in the playoffs? Are they happy to be where they are? I was chatting when we did the Leicester game against them at the tail end of last season, when Leicester want to get promoted. They were. You could see, and this is a bit of a generalisation. You could see Preston fans going, "We'd love a bit of that," and every fan would. "Oh, we'd love a bit of that." But even the jeopardy at either end of the table, which sounds a bit daft, you wouldn't want to be involved in a relegation fight, would you? But if you were crap all season and had a wonderful last 5 games, and you did a Sheffield Wednesday and suddenly rose out of the ashes, and it's like, oh, what a season! We were terrible for ages, but we forget about that. But we ended up, and it was really emotional. It made us all feel something. That's why. And again, I'm not saying this in a condescending way to a Preston fan, because I'm not a Preston fan. But you kind of go in. If you're not happy with the football and it doesn't feel like there's a bit of life, or there isn't any jeopardy in the season, then you're well within your rights to say, no, I'm not really having it, because the players will come and go. The management, as we've seen, will come and go. But the fans are there. They pay the money. They can say what they want. So there is that element. And maybe that dovetails into what we're talking about here with Ajin, where he's gone, it's my football club, in the kind of gladiatorial sense of, are you not entertained? Well, if I'm not entertained, mate, see ya. I mean, I'm going to bring someone in that's going to give me something to feel this season. And whether that manifests itself in City going the wrong way and it looking a bit sticky, we'll soon see. But it might lead to a glorious day at Wembley. It might lead to glory in the top 2. We just don't know as yet, do we?
Fletch, you were at a lot of the pre-season games, the domestic ones. What's your thoughts, just quickly, on Saturday's game and how it played out? Was it what you expected? Surprised, disappointed? Obviously, Arindam is he's gone on and said he was really disappointed with some of what he saw. I think that's a feeling amongst a lot of fans. I think I'm kind of like, I'm just relieved to get through it unbeaten because of where the squad's at and the inconsistency and the troubles coming in from pre-season.
You'll have to forgive me if you can hear the roar of the engine behind me. But
I can see you going backwards. I'm starting to get travel
sick. Everyone's going.
Yeah. Why are you going backwards and not forwards?
You weirdo! What a weirdo! Yeah. It's picked to go backward. No one does that.
There's obviously 3 seats. What on earth are you doing? For those
he's picked the engine. He's going backwards, and he's next to the toilet. He's gone for the trifecta.
For those that aren't watching the video, Fletch is on a train going to York, and he's going backwards, which I'm not convinced any normal human actively opts to go backwards on the train.
Well, let me tell you now. Every seat is pointing in the wrong direction, so I've got no choice in the matter.
No jokes about Northern Railway. I've been told off about that before.
Well, on the game, let's move swiftly on before I mention Prutts' tan. The game itself.
What a tan as well, by the way. Anyway, he told me he's been to Portugal. He hasn't. That's a sunbed tan.
That's fantastic on Ezel Road. That's where I've been.
Oh yeah. It's great.
I've got a little bit too much knowledge on that, haven't I?
Yeah, well, we all know about Ezel Road, but anyway. Go on, Fletch.
Right, on the game. If you can hear me, I think regarding the game itself, I think that from what I've seen, I also feel that, as I touched upon in pre-season, the frailty defensively of how open they look. I also think at times they dig themselves into a hole where they lose the ball in such a precious area, and then it has to be this scrambling defence all the time. The player that's come out the worst of it is Matty Jacob from social media, and the stats back that up. He completed something like 2/3 of his passing when everyone else completed like 80%, and then of course he's part at fault for Bristol City's opener. So I think that it's going to take a lot of time, and as we've touched upon before, Baz, why are we giving ourselves August and September to get things correct when you should be going into a season squad-wise ready to go? It just feels like they're 2 months behind everyone else at the moment.
Arindam, the word I used in the second half before he made the changes to bring on Will Jarvis and Liam Miller, it felt like a performance where they were on life support. They were just hanging on and hanging on and hanging on. And the other word was defensive faffing. There was, I always felt under Liam, when they played out from the back, there was a conviction and a purpose about what they were trying to do. They were trying to, you could, and when it worked, it was brilliant. They played. away at Southampton will always stick in my mind for the way they played through the press and scored. At the minute, it just feels like unnecessary faffing. Ivor Pandor gets the ball, and he doesn't. Within a minute, chaps, on Saturday, he was almost tackled on the edge of his box, and then he went forward, and Oscar was caught offside within a minute. There was a lot of faffing around without any conviction, and Bristol City just kept taking the ball off them time and time. And against a better team, I think they're 2 or 3 goals behind long before Bristol City score, because they were so poor and there was only really Alfie Jones that had any conviction about what he was trying to do. And Sean McLaughlin and Matty Jacob got hammered on social media, but they weren't good. They don't look at all comfortable in that system, and it's to the detriment of the team. Arindam, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the phrase that Fletch used about digging themselves into hole was absolutely correct. I think that's what happened for the goal that Bristol City scored, and that all came from the problems on the left-hand side of defence and failing to work the ball out in the way they wanted to. And the frustrating thing is we could see that coming for a very long time. Obviously, I was sat near you at the game, Barry, and we were talking about this well in advance of it happening, saying the left side looked like a problem area. And that half of the defence was definitely showing a lack of balance compared to the other side. I thought that some of the defenders came out with some credit. I thought Coyle did well. I thought Alfie Jones did well. There's certainly the other two. I mean, there were lots of moments where you were thinking, well, your heart's in your mouth here. And as you're talking about with Panda, I mean, he's played a part in this because he's not looking as comfortable on the ball as you would like. I mean, he was shaky at times in pre-season, and that was there again to see during the game on Saturday. I think there were good things that he did. I mean, he made one very good save, for example, but that whole sort of uncertainty is spreading around, and it's something I need to eradicate as soon as possible. And obviously, like Finlay coming in, that's going to be a boost. I've obviously not seen enough of him in first team action so far to make a judgment, but I think that with his technical skill from what he's developed early in his career, and the fact he's been lower down playing against men at a difficult level, hopefully he'll be equipped to solidify things. But at the moment, they just look too vulnerable.
Prutts, they've signed goalkeeper Anthony Rachopi from Young Boys in Switzerland. He played for Champions League last season for them against Man City. We've talked a lot about Pandor. Obviously, the owner's gone on record and put his neck on the line about Pandor earlier in the season. There was disagreements between the owner, Liam Rossini, Barry Richardson, who was the goalkeeping coach at the time. They didn't think Pandor was championship ready. They've obviously signed a Champions League goalkeeper who you feel is coming in to be number one. Wednesday night against Sheffield Wednesday in the League Cup, does that give Tim Volter the perfect opportunity to give Rachopi a game in the League Cup and then keep him in the team for the game at Plymouth next weekend, or do you think he'll stick with Pandor until such time as he feels that he's not, he can make that change again?
Well, it'll give him the perfect opportunity. I've been in teams and squads where the first team in the first league game of the season has been kind of put together over the course of pre-season, but then doesn't hit the ground running. Suddenly you make a few changes to rest a few players for a League Cup game, and it makes it so straightforward for the manager to go, well, you lot played better than that lot. Come on, most of you can start. It's such an easy, not an easy get out, because it sounds like the manager's not taking responsibility. It's an easy, quick fix to what potentially might not be great on the opening day of the season. Yes, there's got to be a bit of patience, but we discussed it many a time on the podcast last season about City having to make up for lost time when it came to kind of keeping on the coattails of the top three, the top four, and then duking it out for that final playoff position. So it does open the door for him. Whether that's viewed as a slightly less pressurised way of getting in the side and seeing what English football is about, I don't know, because all the games are tough, aren't they? You know what I mean? A decent run in any particular cup can breed confidence, and that can absolutely find its way into the league form. So I get the sense, and I've not heard anything running up to the game from Tim or what his take on it is. I don't think for 1 second he'd take any of it lightly. And again, going off what Ajan has done in the running of the football club, it's not a game that he'd likely toss over his shoulder either, is it? So he'll want the best team for that game playing, which then, if that manifests itself in changes towards next weekend's game, then so be it. And if it sounds like I'm saying this in quite a blunt way, then it absolutely is, because these players have been brought in to perform. This squad, yes, it might be a stylistic change that the owner wants, But this squad has to fundamentally do better than what the last squad did. A lot to like about the last squad. Still didn't get in the playoffs though.
Yeah, that's a key thing. Just touching back onto like McLaughlin and Jacob. Nigel references this. Tom references it and mentions Ryan Giles. Will come on to him in just a minute. Again, Peter very shaky at the back. Lots of concern about Jacob and Sean McLaughlin. Fletch. That was an area, wasn't it? We talked about throughout pre-season. Arindam's referenced it as well. We talked about the left side in pre-season, particularly when you've got a new goalkeeper as well. Those three players, that level of uncertainty, it was a problem again on Saturday, wasn't it? Fletch, going backwards, are you there?
Yeah, going backwards. Sorry, I was just trying to annoy the tannoy. Yeah, down that left-hand side, there is a clear and obvious frailty for me. You've got to put Giles back into the left-back position and allow Miller to play, I think, now. Some of the comments to us on the 1904 club suggest that Matty Jacobs should go out on loan. And I think that's a good call, to be honest. I think he needs that League One or League Two experience so he can make that left-back position his own, because he's a young player being given responsibility of a really difficult system. And at the end of the day, he's still a player who's learning all those raw left-back. And there's so many different variations of a left-back now. You can play like a wing-back where you go down, obviously, and try and get as high as possible up and down. You can be inverted where you move in field and be a centre midfielder almost. Or you can just be an old-school full-back. And at the moment,
we're losing him. Prutts,
more than anything, because of the lead has to be inverted and create space for go around.
Fletch, we're losing you.
So, and then that responsibility to a player who's not so tactically understanding.
Prutts, he's played 15 times, Matty Jacob, in the Championship. Do you think for his development they stick with him? Because I'm also conscious that he's becoming something of which is a shame for a lad that's come through the system and is loves the bones of the club, and he's one of their own. And so I'm conscious that it doesn't become a situation where people are hammering Matty Jacob and he becomes the fall guy. But do you think he would benefit from going out and playing 35, 40 games in League One, which is obviously a step down from where he is now, but to get that level, that experience, because he still hasn't played a huge amount of men's football in his career.
It's not. I'm just looking through it now. I mean, if my maths is correct, you're kind of just looking about just over 50 appearances, are you? For a player that's 23, that's shocking. Is not the right word. I mean, that's too big a word to use for that. But that is for him, if not anyone else. You know what I mean? If you are at a club the size of Hull City, and with the greatest respect to the places that he's been on loan to as well, you need a lot more games under your belt. I mean, hopefully he's still playing at 35, 36, 37, 38. That's where he might make up that time. But it's an easy hit sometimes for a certain fan that approaches football in a certain way. It's a very easy hit to kind of beat the kid that's been there for ages and is part of the furniture and ostensibly seems like a good member of the side and a hard-working lad. And again, without sounding condescending, these are all fundamentals and should be there for any professional footballer. So I think it is a bit of an easy target. Whether he stunk the place out, I don't know, because I didn't see the game. You from your selves, we can't sit there and go, Christ, this player is struggling, and that's when you feel empathy. If it's a player that's not playing well, that's not putting it in, then you're kind of going, well, you're killing yourself there. So what you're doing. But if it is just a sense of a little bit of frustration, him. You know what I mean? Ugh, there he goes. If it's one of those, then I've not got too much truck with that, because I think that's just a very easy get out from a fan base point of view. But whether it's with City or whether it's somewhere else on loan, he needs to get the games under his belt. And whether you get a better player more consistently because of the more minutes that he plays, we only know if he has to play through a little period of adjustment and flourishes through it, or he plays and he goes the other way and goes under.
Arindam, what's your thoughts on Matty Jacob?
Yeah, I agree with what Prutts is saying about the fact that he's a hard-working player. That's visibly clear to see with what he's doing on the field. And all his moments weren't bad on Saturday. It's not as though He's made a catalogue of errors. They're just high-profile ones that are sticking to people's heads. And the times where he actually did things that were good, there's one very big moment where Mehmeti had a chance and he was in the right place to deflect that and hit the bar. I mean, that was a very crucial intervention. I think the way that the mistakes have happened are why people are picking up on them. So, for example, with the goal, obviously you see him falling in the way that he does, and that sticks in people's heads because of the manner in which the goal was conceded. So I'd say that it's not all bad, but it's just obviously an area of weakness, and that's why people are picking up on it. And it's leading to when it leads to the goal, it's obviously going to be a stand-up moment for people.
Giles is the interesting one because we know there's. Look, I know the owner referenced it at the Q&A last week. I did an interview with Adjon a couple of weeks ago where he said that if Giles wanted to go, he'd let him go. We know there is interest from Middlesbrough. I've seen cast iron proof that there's interest from Middlesbrough. Tam Kessler came out and did an interview with BBC Radio Humberside before the game on Saturday, which hasn't gone down particularly well with Wigan. Read comments made about Charlie Hughes and wanting to come and all that sort of stuff. But he also, in the same interview, said that Giles needs to pay the club respect because they've paid a lot of money, and they have. They've paid a lot of money for Ryan Giles. So Ryan Giles needs to decide, does he want to be at Hull City in the long term, or does he want to go to Middlesbrough? He put an absolute purr of a cross in early on Saturday for Oscar Estupiñán, who should have scored, but the goalkeeper O'Leary made a great save. But then he faded and was taken off quite early in the second half. Does Giles go back to left back? We know that defensively that there have been question marks about Giles throughout the last few seasons. Going forward, I think everybody would agree that he's one of the best left backs in the Championship. Obviously, racked up a huge number of assists for Middlesbrough a couple of seasons ago, but Jacob on the left and Ryan Giles further ahead of him is not working. That isn't going to work. That is a problem. Obviously, Liam Miller is a left winger, so you'd imagine he will come in. But Fletch, if you can hear us, where are you with the Jacob and Giles situation? What would be your answer? Because for me at the minute, I'm looking at it and thinking, I think defensively they'd be more solid with Louis Coyle at left back and Cody Drame. Admittedly, he's injured just at the minute, but when he comes back, playing him on the right, and that gives them more solidity.
I'd probably put. Look at this.
This is such a professional.
I can't win today.
And he's sat near a door. Fletch's the weirdest strange traveller you've ever seen.
Go on, Fletch. Give us what you've got. Oh, he's gone again.
That's what he's got. Nothing.
That was like, he may as well have stuck two fingers up at you, Prutts, there.
My God. That was just when he waited and waited, then he was about to talk and the tannoy came on. That's brilliant.
Absolutely. So, Arindam, I'll come to you. What are you, with that left side, are you bringing Giles back and putting him at left back for the time being? What would, if you're the gaffer and you're picking the team for Wednesday night against Wednesday, what are you doing?
Yeah, that just seems to make sense, Baz. But what I would say as well is that I did like seeing Giles getting forward in the way that he did. I mean, we're not used to seeing that on a regular basis. I thought he had some threatening moments. So the wide areas were actually positive for City. I know I've said a lot of things that I've been frustrated with, but that was definitely something positive to come out of it, and he played a big part in that. And that works on both flanks as well, both sides of the pitch. I mean, as we alluded to at the time on Saturday, the game was shifting in momentum because of the substitutions. And I thought that, Jarvis, he did really well when he came on that side. Obviously, Miller, being a new player, we've all got our eyes on him thinking, what's he going to do? I thought his impact was very noticeable in terms of contributions to big moments. Seen a lot of him. Prutts have seen a lot of him as well in the Championship. There's times where he's looked so dangerous over the course of last season. So bringing some of that form into Saturday, that was encouraging. So yeah, I think in the wide areas, I'm actually quite encouraged by the way the team can get forward with Giles in there.
Prutts is like, you're laughing because you're laughing at the message that Fletch is just putting in the whole carriage is empty on his train service, but somebody with a screaming toddler has sat next to him.
That is great. That reminds me. Sorry to go off on a tangent away from football. When I was down playing for Southampton, and I had ankle ligament. No, I'd broken a metatarsal. I'd only done it because Beckham and Rooney had done it, so I thought I'd jump on that bandwagon. Legends with metatarsal injuries. And I'd gone to the cinema on my own, as I used to do quite a bit, on my crutches. And it was this screen, obviously, at the front, and it was kind of tiered seating all the way up to the back, and I thought I'll get myself away in the corner, tucked away. No one else in the cinema. In fact, there was a couple diagonally down. This fellow walks in, so I've crutched all the way to the top, sat in the corner. Fellow's walked up, looking at all the rows, like one by one, and then he comes up to me and he goes, "Sorry, mate, you're in my seat." So I said, "Shall I move then?" And he said, "If you could." So I obviously made a massive song with a harumph with my crutches and my big boot, and then sat 2 places down from it. It was ridiculous. Almost, you couldn't write it, almost sketch-like. But we're talking about football, aren't we? So what were we saying?
To be honest with you, I can show your anecdotes. I like your stories. So let's have some more of those.
It was very funny, very funny. And I obviously came back a much better player. No, I didn't. I was terrible after my metatarsus. But, I mean, going back to Arindam's point about potentially, obviously, players available and who you've got in the door to be able to use as and when. And we discussed it before we started recording about City's take on other players. You keep playing these players until they are out the door. Maybe there's the human nature element of a player if he thinks he's got a move on the horizon that he might be playing within himself. But as long as the whole City plays, you maximise who you've got and how you use them. And if it is, take a Giles, for example, who has operated at this level and done very well at this level, but seemingly tail end of last season didn't really kind of find an absolute spot, did he? And there was a bit of question marks about that and potentially where he might be going. So there's certainly, when it comes to who's actually in a City shirt at the moment, there's a lot to like about it. But the sooner they get a settled side, i.e., knowing who's in the building, who wants to be in the building, and who wants possibly to move on, the better it's going to be collectively, I think.
It's interesting, Arindam, isn't it? Because I'm looking at some of the questions, and thank you, everybody, as you always do, getting in touch at the 1904 Club. Liam simply writes, entertaining football, ? But the tweet below it is from Matty, who says, I thought City were positive. And it's that, I guess, there's been such made of Tim Walter and his style of play, and it's all out attack. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because at the minute, he has not got the players. That squad, that team is not good enough. We all know that. And that team won't be the same team that kicks off against Sheffield United in the first game back after the international break in just over a month's time. So until he gets the players in the team and in the squad that he wants that can play his style of football, as Matty said himself, it's bright. We gave it a go against a really difficult side, and it's a point on the board. It is about getting through that first month, isn't it? Of the players trying to understand what they want from the manager, the manager getting to grips with the Championship, whilst also playing against really, really strong, well-adept sides. Bristol City are a well-drilled side. They've been together under Liam Manning for now a period of time. They know, I think I saw a stat, there's only 2 players in Bristol City's team different to the team that last played against Hull City, whereas, there's 8 or 9 changes in Hull City's team plus manager. So that's the kind of, it is feeding their way through these first few weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what your listeners are saying in terms of positive football. I mean, that was definitely on show. I suppose the perspective I'm viewing it from is the bar's been raised in terms of expectation because of the way they've been talking at the time of the manager arriving, the lead up to the season. We're hearing all about this front foot, aggressive football that's going to be different to Liam Rossini, and that's the bar that I'm judging it against, which is why my mood is probably not as positive as maybe some of the other fans are, the ones that are messaging you. But of course, the squad is definitely lacking depth in terms of options at the moment. I mean, looking at the team sheet on Saturday, I was concerned at the number of young players there are on the bench without substantial experience. I think that's good when you see them surrounded by other experienced players, but I think there's too many of those at the moment. I think especially further forward, right at the top end of the pitch, they're badly lacking in options at the moment. I think Oscar, a lot is being expected of him at the moment. Personally, I've not been entirely convinced by him during the time that I've seen him playing for Hull City. I know that he scores goals, but from my perspective, he misses too many chances as well. He's caught offside too often. I don't think that he's the ideal solution. Very much is a case of needs must at the moment. So I think that once we've got more bodies in and Tim has got the options that he wants, from his perspective, I can understand why he might be frustrated at the moment, because he wants to impose this style of football, get it clicking and get the team ready. And at the moment, the tools aren't there. So hopefully when those come in, we'll start seeing a different type of positivity and more in tune with what the management of the club are telling us we're going to see.
Prutts, Sean says, we lost the ball far too often in poor areas. We need a calm head. Historically, certainly last season, that was Mika Seri, wasn't it? That ability to just take this thing out of the game, the calm experience, the over 30. You look at the midfield on Saturday, and the kind of the two central midfielders, if you like, were Xavier. I always have to be careful. I don't know why, and because when he says his name, it's almost seductive. It's like Xavier, and I always get that in my head when he says it, and I'm like, so I'm really nervous about saying his name, but Xavier Simons and Regan, Regan's played a lot. He's experienced at this level, but obviously Mika was out officially with a knee injury. I feel there's more to that, and there's.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, there's interest from Saudi. He's not really featured under Tim in pre-season, but Mika has historically been that experienced head, hasn't he?
He has, yeah, he has. And we discussed last season the availability of Regan, and obviously Xavier, as you're talking about, in that odd way you're doing it. You sound a bit like Graham Norton when you said it the first time.
That's how he says it to me, though, and it's like it makes me really nervous because I just want to say Xavi because Tim calls him Xavi or Xavier, but it's not. It's Xavier.
Wow.
It scares me a bit. I'm really intimidated by it. So I apologise to everybody for going on about that.
You are moving uneasily in your seat as well. Well, they do need that. And let's be honest, when Liam wanted the team to set up, you needed that ability in midfield to be patient on the ball and to be able to take it in areas where you can build going forward. So whether Xavier's going to be that man or Regan's going to be that man, I'll be intrigued to see how the Seri situation handles itself. Because if at the age that we're talking about a player, and if Saudi comes knocking, then it'd be very hard to say no, regardless of what your opinion on Saudi Arabian football is. If you be the cynic in me that knows how quickly your career flashes by would say go and do it. But it's going to need to be one of those, isn't it? If it is going to be him moving on in regards to how they want to play, doesn't really reflect. I mean, that kind of the football that he labels it as, Tim, and what we expect to see. And maybe it's just teething problems, but if that turnover of the ball in midfield does create a bit of chaos, but I can't think for a minute that it's something that the manager would go out of his way to do because control, obviously in football, is paramount when you want to play a certain way. It was paramount for the way Liam wanted to dominate possession, having control of the middle parts of the pitch. But whether that's, like I said, I can't see or think or believe that it would be a proper focus of Tim to say, let's have a bit of carnage in the middle of midfield and see where we end up. Because he wants to play a certain brand of football, but yes, you need to control games.
One player that we know is coming in the door because he was at the MKM Stadium on Saturday was Oscar Zambrano, the 20-year-old from Ecuador. Now, there is a situation hanging over his head regards a doping investigation from dating back to the end of March. Now, he's 20. He's a holding midfielder. He came through the same academy as Moises Caicedo did, and he's been likened to him because he's obviously from the same country, same academy, etc. That's a really interesting one, isn't it, Arindam, of what we're going to get from Zambrano. He is only 20, though, and he doesn't know English football. He's not played here, and it's going to take some time for him to acclimatise, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm excited about this signing if it eventually goes through. I think that this is the type of player they need at the moment because of what we've been talking about and the way the club are talking about in the fact they're so keen to get him through the door despite what's hanging over him off the pitch at the moment. I think he can make a difference if he does settle into English football. As you say, it's going to take some time to acclimatise. But from my point of view, on Saturday, I thought the midfield lacked the control that you'd want ideally. I think that they were overrun too much. I think that Bristol City, they pressed high and that caused a lot of problems. I thought Bristol City had too much of the ball for my liking. So there were moments where Regan would drive forward or Xavier would drive forward and you think, this is what we want to see. But that didn't happen quite enough. I thought that they were a bit too passive at times. So, I think that you really notice it when Seri's not there. He's such an important player. So, I think a steadying influence in midfield's what's needed. So I think that's why it's a potentially exciting signing, this one.
I don't know what happened there. This is just the way things are going this morning. So it sounded like somebody was attacking Prutts' chickens. I don't know if that was the case. So he's had to divert off. Fletch is on a train next to a screaming child, and Burns is at a comedy show in Edinburgh. So it's all gone Pete Tong this morning. But lots of questions again about transfers. So we need to cover that because James writes 2 strikers needed, a winger and another centre midfielder. And he's asking, is Seri leaving? He wasn't in the squad. Is Charlie Hughes close? And what's happening with Doken Sinek? Yeah, I feel like Ajun's going to die on the hill of Doken Sinek. He's still injured. He's still not in full training. God only knows what's going to happen with that one. He may well play again at some point, but it's a wait and see. In terms of, let's just touch on transfers because that is there's 2 weeks to go, or Thursday's 2 weeks to go until the window closes. Charlie Hughes is alive. One City trying hard to get that done. Obviously, there's a problem with Wigan. Look, the comments made by Tan Kesler on Saturday haven't gone down particularly well over in Wigan. They've broadly agreed terms, as I understand it, but the deal is, and has for a couple of weeks now, hinged on the payment terms. So we'll have to wait and see how that one gets played out. We expect Zambrano to be confirmed once they get clearance. And then there is a striker that hasn't, as far as I can see, hasn't been named anywhere yet. A young striker that will be coming in hopefully by the end of the week. I can't imagine it'll be done before the Carabao Cup clash with Sheffield Wednesday on Wednesday, but possibly by the time they go to Plymouth and on Saturday. There are other things in cooking away, but they're the 3 live ones that could be done this week. So I'll have to wait and see on that. But agreed with what James says, they do need 2 strikers. Arindam, you said about Oscar, if he stays, if he goes, we don't know what's going to happen with him come the end of the window. But they've signed 6 players so far. They're going to sign that again, at least. And there's also the discussion about Seri, will he go? McLaughlin is interest in him. We know the Giles situation hasn't been resolved yet. Despite what noises are coming out, the Giles situation has not been resolved, and he could still go. We all hope he stays and he gets settled, and we can find that Tim Bolton can find a place for him and a rhythm with him, because you feel that Giles is the sort of player that in that attacking system could flourish, don't you? Are you still on mute from your chickens?
Yes. No, that was the dog trying to. Well, again, that's amazing. Not back for ages. Willow, come here. Let's get the dog on the podcast. That's relatable, isn't it?
About Ryan Giles.
No, the window cleaner sending the dog into meltdown. Though we've seen Ryan at championship level be very, very effective going forward. So that absolutely makes sense, and that's the reason why when we were chatting about him potentially coming in, and I was not necessarily waxing lyrical, but very positive because of what I'd seen him do at this level from that side of the pitch. So that does work. Going back to Arindam's point about the control in the middle of the pitch, and again, your point about potential personnel and availability of people come the end of the window, it might look slightly different. But if Giles is a player in your squad, you play him, you get him up the pitch as high as possible, you get him to deliver balls into the box, which we know we can do. And then it just changes the dynamic of the way that City want to play, doesn't it, really? So, but for me, if he's a City player at the end of the window, then great. Only a positive.
Yeah. What's the feeling around when, speaking to people, ex-players, current players, managers, coaches, directors, whoever they are? What's the feeling of the impact that the window has? The fact that it doesn't close until the 30th of August, and by that point, teams would have played, 4 league games at least. What's that feeling? Because we had George Elek on the show last.
Yeah, good lad, George. Yep.
Last Monday, and he was of the opinion the window should close before the season starts. I mean, that's not going to happen, but where are you?
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with it from the point of view of, I understand the frustration of managers and players. You can work all the way through pre-season. You can have a set, in inverted commas, side and squad, and then suddenly that can go out the window with a good August or a poor August, can it? Like you look at, we mentioned Ryan Lowe's moved on from Preston after working all his way through pre-season. Suddenly that puts the cat amongst the pigeons for them. So you could have a player that plays out of his skin for August and suddenly he's gone, and that can kind of derail a season or change your realistic expectations of what that season could possibly be. But I do understand the frustration. Structurally, I mean, maybe I should know this being in football journalism, but structurally, it being where it is and how it is, I don't understand why it was put there. Feel free to absolutely enlighten me. But I presume, I mean, was it when these things are put into practice, they are majority voted in, aren't they? So everyone kind of understands what it's going to be, and then moans about it retrospectively, what I always think is brilliant in football. So I do understand the frustration, but also from a player's point of view, cynically and selfishly, you can maybe be in a bit of a grey area with your team, or not know where you are, or not start the season, yet you can still rectify it going into a large portion of what's left of a season, 9 months left of a season, or you can secure a move that potentially might not have been there without people actually seeing you play proper minutes in a division.
Arindam, it's the exciting thing for me about Saturday was the changes that he made when Liam Miller came onto the left and Will Jarvis came down the right. They looked a much better side, didn't they? And I think Miller, particularly, is the sort of player that gets fans off their seat, isn't he? And he made a big difference, didn't he? And there was a couple of moments where he saw a shot block. There was the cross he swung in, and for me, Oscar probably should have got on the end of it. Hopefully that'll come. But players like Miller, that's important for not only the dressing room here that see, oh, we are serious about this season, but for external players thinking, well, I'm not sure about Hull City at the minute. Liam's gone. They've lost a lot of players. They've not really recruited yet. But signing a player like Liam Miller, that can have a big impact, can't it, on potential new recruits that actually see Hull City are serious this season.
Yeah, absolutely, because he showed the type of mentality that we want to see from Hull City players this season. I mean, even Tim Bolton himself will use words like bravery, energy, and those sort of attributes. That's exactly what he was bringing to the party on Saturday. With the way that he approached the game, he was getting Bristol City pushed back.
But it instantly changed the momentum of the game, didn't it, when they came on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it felt like, as you were saying earlier, there was a sense they were hanging on to an extent where Bristol City were mounting more and more pressure towards their goal. That was like a release valve where suddenly they had a different sort of outlet. And, City, instead of being sort of a bit too predictable at times, they started getting that X factor we want to see in the way they're playing football this season. So, as you're saying, other players will look at that and think, well, if a guy like this is coming on with that sort of mindset and that sort of quality, then maybe this is a team that is going to go places this season.
From an ex-pro's point of view, from a player's point of view, there has been a degree of curiosity about Hull City and maybe negativity as well, because they've been slow to get going in the transfer market. If you're a player that there's interest in you from Hull City, when you see the players like Miller arriving, you suddenly thinking, hang on a minute, that might be a club I want to play for.
Yeah, there is definitely a bit of that. You look at ambitiously where you want your season to go, and in a bigger context, where you want that season to fit in your career, and what it could afford you if you have a good season with City. I totally get that. It was a point that we made several times last year about how Liam was good at attracting players, and the proof was in the pudding of the actual. Maybe not in the way the season finished and where the club finished, but in the actual players that came through the door. There's some impressive additions, wasn't there? Which, yes, it's Hull City, but yes, it's Hull City under Liam Rosenior that was the collective draw. There is that unknown quantity under Tim, but again, players, agents should do the due diligence with regards to what he's like as a manager, what he wants from his sides. And then, I mean, again, the other side, I feel like I've been talking a lot about money today, but again, it's where they fit in the firmament of the budget of how much they can pay. I mean, I would not know off the top of my head what an average wage is at Hull City. What's the top paid player on Hull City? I wouldn't know, but I do know that incrementally Championship wages have gone up and up and up and up and up, haven't they? With how it's dovetailed into the Premier League. So. I absolutely, and again, it's another point we made about Hull becoming a destination club for footballers. It should be. Yes, in a longer term, all clubs are stepping stones to somewhere. But right now, it should be Hull City look decent. The fans are good. They're giving it a go. There's a potential there for being in the mix in the top 10 of the squad. So there's always, it should be that attractive to players. Absolutely.
Arindam, it's going to be a frantic final couple of weeks of the window, isn't it? We expect they've signed, as I said before, they've signed 6 players. We know there's 3 more potentially in this week. That takes the total up to 9. You would think, well, I know because I had a conversation with somebody on Friday afternoon that there's going to be 4 more loan players coming in. So that takes the tally up to 13. according to my abacus, which is just over there. That's not insignificant, is it? And there will be 1 or 2 more arrivals within that. So we could be 14, 15 by the time. And we know how much Adjun likes the deadline day, likes that buzz, the frantic nature of the window. So there will be 1 or 2 signings at least on deadline day, which means we're in for a late night here. But it is going to be frantic, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It is going to be frantic, and going to be blunt about it and say it does need to be frantic. Because when you look at some of the holes that have been left in the squad from what happened last season, I think they're very big shoes to fill. You don't fill Jaden Philogene shoes easily. You don't fill Greaves' shoes.
Miller's a good start, though, isn't it? With trying to fill the feet of Jaden.
Absolutely. The point I'll make is that obviously these are very difficult holes to fill. They started to do it, but they need to make sure if they want to get to where they want to be, that they fill enough of these holes as well as they possibly can do. As I said earlier on, I just think that I'd like to have seen more business done earlier. I know they've already made the point themselves that someone like, for example, Philogene came relatively late last time, and that's true, that's fine, that can happen. But that doesn't mean that it's the ideal situation. The fact that worked, I mean, if he would have come sooner, that would have been better for everybody. So I think that they need to get business done, a lot of it, and they need to do it as fast as possible. That's my take on it.
Prutts, what's your thoughts? You concur or not?
I do. Yeah, I think Liam's a good start. Jaden, obviously, his impact on the team was wonderful. Liam Delap's impact on the team again was wonderful. I think as long as the business is done, I'm very much with Arindam with what he's saying there. With it makes sense to get it done earlier, but to get it done full stop, especially nowadays, as you say, that frantic nature of what the window can look like, I think is the most important thing. So whether it's late knock-ins on the last day of the transfer window, but you get who you want and you keep who you want, potentially more importantly, then as long as that work's done and they're not chasing the tails in January trying to make up for a poor window now, then it's still overwhelmingly positive.
Just finally, because I know we're very short of time. Sheffield Wednesday in the Carabao Cup, then, and let's be fair, City have been absolutely garbage in the cup, the League Cup for the last. Well, they've gone out at this stage in the last 3 years. So that's a big opportunity. And then Plymouth on Saturday, and we touched on at the top about the situation with Plymouth and Wayne Rooney, and that, given what happened there at Hillsborough on Sunday, that's a massive opportunity for Hull City to go there and inflict some more pain, because that can't be given what Wayne said as well, that can't be a confident group of players right now.
No, and it's perfect time for Hull City to play them. It's because if they are having the ambition and a realistic ambition of being at least in the kind of top 10 and improving, hopefully on 7th, then with the greatest respect, a team like Plymouth that's looking like it's already out of form is one to beat, isn't it? It's by no means straightforward a task in the Championship to beat the opposition. But as I said, aspirations of finishing anywhere higher than they did last season. And then a Plymouth side, however you get about doing it, has got to be one that you've got to knock over because of a manager that's potentially still finding his feet. They're still working out how he wants that side to play. Yes, echoes of what Tim's doing with Hull City, but Hull City being where they were last season and being able to beat sides like the Plymouth Argyle is so very important.
And Arindam, if they can go to Plymouth and win 4 points from their first 2 games, you'd have to say that's a decent start given everything that's going on and the lack of squad, the players and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it'd be fantastic because as much as we're talking about flaws in the team, because lots of people care about them getting these issues right. The fact is, the team's going to be judged on the results. And Saturday, as much as there are aspects that people didn't like, maybe still a point on the board, you get another win. You get a win early doors, and suddenly to have 4 from 2, and it's looking very rosy, especially considering the amount of churn there's been, the amount of teething problems there've been. So if you can get those sort of tallies on the board quickly, then it stands in very good stead looking further forward.
Great stuff. We are expecting the club to announce the new head of recruitment, if you like. Lee Darnborough left for Stoke City. We are expecting that will be ratified or made public, I should say, because the person doing the job has been in it for a few weeks now, I think. But we're expecting that to be confirmed potentially on Tuesday, but don't hold me to that. We're obviously expecting Zambrano to be done and dusted as well. So that's it. So we've lost Fletch. He's somewhere on a train going backwards still next to a screaming baby. Arindam, thank you very much for joining us for the first time.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to speak to you all.
And Prutts, well, it's just nice to see your pretty face again.
Well, that's very kind of you. It's been lovely to chat to both. I've been very well entertained by Fletch's travails on the train and the window cleaner that was here before for me. So nice. at least my wife will be happy. She's been moaning about the windows for weeks.
Well, you've not been around, to be fair, out in the World
Cup. Exactly. Yeah, I packed my chamois away for the sun. Not a euphemism either.
Oh my God! We'll have. I'm loath to say we'll have like some common sense back next week with Burnsley when he gets back from his comedy festival.
We missed you, Burnsley, if you're listening.
Yeah. We haven't really. We'll all be back next week. Hopefully, after progression in the EFL Cup against the Owls, Prutts' former Flame, and
yes.
3 points down at Home Park. And if you are going to Home Park, it's one hell of a journey. At least it's not half this time. So we will see you down at Home Park on Saturday. Keep getting in touch at the 1904 Club, and we'll be back with you again soon. Thanks for listening. Thank you for watching, and take care.